Water in the city, rushing to me, down upstream. Are you with me? Under rainbow, water in the city, rushing to me, down upstream. Are you with me? Feeling. Good afternoon, everyone. BC Richfield here, coming to you live from a wet, windy, blowy Suffolk coast here in the UK. A really big shout out to everybody joining the stream live today, as well as everybody watching on recording. It has been a pretty wild week so far. And while we're going to obviously make a lot of time to cover charts, it is our chart request Wednesday. So please do let me know if you've got anything you want me to take a look at. We will chart it for you live on the show. The real key thing that I want to start off with today is more on a kind of news and impact basis around what's going on. And there's just two really key things today that we need to be aware of. We have the World Economic Forum going on in Davos at the moment. Okay, so you have the annual meetings, but you know, if that's red folder, then this is flaming red folder today. And that's in an hour and a half from now. President Trump is due to speak. Now, I referred to him this morning as the real main market catalyst of the last year. And in truth, that's what he's done across the board, whether it's been cryptocurrency, legacy markets, obviously what we've seen with risk, the pressure that he's been putting on the Federal Reserve to cut rates, right? Everything that we've seen from the developments with Greenland, the swinging support between Russia and Ukraine, the attacks on the UK, which I have to say, you know, I actually think of all of the crazy things that have come out. I think a lot of his opinions on the UK aren't that incorrect, but it's not a political show. I'm not a politician, right? So I'm going to stick within my own lane. So we are going to dive into the charts, but please do be aware of that today. I know we've seen quite a major market reaction heading into this. It's, you know, a lot of this to do with the uncertainty, the economic uncertainty, everything that's going on with Greenland. It's more escalations. The other side of it is obviously we've had that really big kind of risk-off move into what we've seen gold ripping for a while, metals doing particularly well, that risk off basket really kind of overperforming. However, there was a, you know, really shares a lot of this of my own sentiment. I'm really not going to put myself in the same brackets as this guy, but a real market legend out there called the Short Bear. If any of you aren't you know, familiar, you should go and find them on Twitter. You know, this guy's a real old school, full on, you know, certified 8-figure plus trader every year. We're just saying that actually, you know, the overextension on their side is making risk start to look really attractive again. And I actually agree. Now, we know with Trump, what his kind of negotiation tactics typically are. They're to go in incredibly heavy, miles over the top, and then give up a little bit to achieve a lot, right? And he is immense at doing that. Like or loathe the guy. Probably easier to loathe him if you're on the other side of the fence. But right now, I think, you know, gun to my head, I would definitely take him over some wet blanket like Starmer in charge of the UK. Craigie boy, how are we doing? Lovely sentiment, mate. Wishing you well too. And the same to you, our lovely Jojo. So the other factor that's kind of playing into this downturn is we have had some kind of mixed earnings as well. And, you know, if we really wanted to see that support, if we look back to the previous weeks, we had quite strong job numbers coming in. Now, a lot of people, you know, I got some messages about that saying like, yeah, BC, you said like job numbers are up, but I really don't understand why that would affect the risk market in a negative way. It's good, right? Healthy economy, etc. Well, actually, it's a little bit, well, not a little bit, it's more linked to the rate cut potential, right? The Federal Reserve very, very honed in on the unemployment and the jobs, right? So if that starts to show strength, it just means that there's a little bit less incentive for them to cut rates. And that's not always the greatest news for risk assets, right? Risk assets thrive in low rate and cutting rate conditions. And obviously we're seeing that kind of swing emerge. You then throw in the political, geopolitical uncertainty and instability, everything that's going on. You put it in this big cauldron of all the world, you know, the majority of world leaders being obviously at the WEF today, then you've just got this major kind of catalyst. So from a swing position, I'm out of the market at the moment. I am very, very, very selective, which obviously you should be as a trader with all positions, but swing positions, especially, I make my living as an intraday trader. And today looks like we could have a little delicious slice of volatility coming in. But again, you got to be so careful in these conditions. Shay, my friend, how are you doing? Anyway, there's the little news update. I'm sure a lot of you have got this on the horizon, but now what I really want to do is just really drill down into the technicals, see where we are, review what we said at the beginning of the week, how these plans kind of played out. We had very clean, clear levels and a very clean and clear trade plan. I'm going to show you how, if you just, you always want to process the news. You want to get it within your kind of realm and sphere of control for what your understanding is, but you can't have analysis and news paralysis, right? You can't be thinking, God, this is going off today, it's not going to do that. This is going off, it's going to do that. When we're looking at price action in its purest form, we make these plans beforehand and then we let the price action guide us, all right? So obviously you have access to all of these live shows on YouTube through the Bird Nest channel on the live tab. So please feel free to go back, review them, critique me. I absolutely love it. Ultimately, we learn a lot more from our critique than we do what we do particularly well. But I'm just going to run through what the plan was, what we set out, and obviously what we were looking at on Monday's live show as well. You have a quick sip of tea, and then we're going to dive straight in. Shay, how you doing, brother? Miserable. Not laughing at you, mate, laughing with you. All the best people bounce back, and they bounce back hard. So just quickly to cover what we've got here, and please do let me know, ladies and gents, if there's any problem with the stream or the sound at all. But yeah, the equal lows down here are on the chart. I think they're a really key liquidity pool underneath this beautiful consolidation here, which we came in. We kind of set this range here. Price started to chop around. See how it was just struggling to drive in any deeper. We got that beautiful 3-drive pattern in here. All right, which always makes me think of people like Tyler Durden, who I used to watch back in the day. Right, beautiful 3-drive pattern into here, wreck proof as well. And then we kind of took off. So the question I'm always asking myself is, if this was, obviously where the smartest of us were all positioning in here, which is why you'll hear it referred to as smart money, concepts, institutional concepts, etc. Look, retail typically make up about 5% of the traditional market. So I'd imagine this, not really sure in truth what the move is in crypto, but crypto is affected by, traditional markets as well, because we look at the risk on and risk off sentiment. But whoever it was that was positioning down here, they've done the absolute best. And whoever it was that was selling up in these regions here, you're going to have people in here and here that made that call. So what I want to know is, are they going to defend this area? And what we saw initially was, yes. All right, if we look into this and we kind of take this area, and why would I take this and this? And I'm going to show you in a moment. All right. So this is the sharp move down here, right? Market recovered quickly. Look at that, that V-shaped recovery that we saw here. All right. Down and then back up. Now, I give plenty of really terrible analogies to some students and to some members and bits and pieces, as well as friends. And, I call this one like the hot water test, right? So you got a bucket of hot water, boiling hot water. You got a bucket of tepid water, all right? And at the bottom of each is a gold coin. And, you walk up, you're blindfolded, you have to put your hand in, commit to grabbing that coin from the bottom of the bucket. Now, if that's boiling water in there, your hand will literally touch the water and then have to move away quickly, right? Versus you come into an area where you can put your hand in and then it's not too bad. You can kind of put your hand in there for a while. It's warm water. You can reach down, you can get what you would like. So for example, if we look at this area here, just in a little bit of a microcosm, but we had the V-shaped recovery here, that aggression off the lows, right? And then when price kind of came up into this area here, let me just get rid of those for a second. We can see price kind of sticks here, right? Starts to consolidate. Then we see the breakout, right? Again, no big V-shaped recovery here, nothing here, right? This is the kind of first one here when we see it kind of come up, but even this stalls a little bit, right? This one I quite like because it's quite aggressive, but this one here, you really see it, right? And what's the difference between these? We're talking about consolidations, and then we're talking about fast move away from those consolidations. Yeah, higher momentum moves, impulse legs. And then you're looking at consolidation and the market's moving from a state of balance, yeah, so, or a range, as we would trade them, consolidation. Then we get the expansion, then we get another consolidation here. But then ultimately what happens through here is price kind of holds this level, right? So this is where the market's making a decision. Here, it's accepted that buyers are willing to pay a higher price. We see the expansion. This is where the market considers fair value. We see the expansion again. And then this is a little bit too much, and we get that retrace down to here. Now, the reason I don't look to kind of get short in these moments here is we're more in a consolidation, but also, you know, if I'm looking realistically at what's supporting the market here at this point, if I'm looking at the absorption down here from these wicks, that's where I want to see, you know, not want to see, obviously, but if I was expecting price to really break down here and retest into here and ultimately down to these levels, that's what I'd be looking for. Just to give you a little bit of context, if you do have any questions about these, please do let me know. You bring the calm to the space. I'd never know if we're in a bull or a bear. Wonderful. Thank you, Shay. Well, yeah, I think you're being too kind. But I think one of the really important things for me is not really kind of, I mean, looking at the macro as in, are we bullish, bearish from a risk sentiment, but then, you know, really understanding where we're positioning ourselves for higher probability trades, like expected value that we would see on those trades. But yeah, I think commitment, conviction's the word I'm looking for, is the key thing, and just not being afraid to be wrong. So in here we see this nice sharp recovery, right? So the reason that I'm monitoring this area here, yes, we've got liquidity below these lows, but I like this consolidation in here. Let me just zoom in for you guys, because appreciate it might not have the, might be a little bit too dinky, right? I like this area here because this is the breaker, right? This is the up move before price flushed out liquidity and quickly recovered this area. All right, we set fresh demand in here and here, but this is the area I was really interested in because this is the consolidation before the break. So as a very simple creature that I am, I like to mark the high of this move because this is what supported what ultimately led to the break of structure and the really, really nice moves higher that we got, but also the high of this move here because we were never tested back into this. What price did here, if we look at the high absorption high here, we saw price had a breakout of this area, a nice strong candle, and then price found support within this area of rejection, right? If we kind of extend this across here, we can see there's confluence with where price was previously finding rejection as well. So nice above, price draws into here, and then we move higher. So that is where we've had a reaction, okay? But as we were saying, this basically forms our range low. This was obviously the range high, and this is where I was really looking for some movement here, right? We got this breakout. Apologies for this mess on here. I just want to leave it on there because it was from last week's show, the Monday's show as well. It was what we were using for our analysis. For anybody that's new to the show, I don't delete anything from the charts, right? Unless we do it on the live show. It just helps accountability. It helps people that are coming on here that maybe have an interest in how I look at the markets. Yarrow, hello, mate. How are you doing? Jojo's fully committed to the bull market. I mean, as am I. I just think that anything can obviously, you know, derail things. But the great Lynn Alden said, you know, there's no stopping this train. Ultimately, if you look at the capital flows, if you look at the CapEx spending that's going into AI, all the chat about the bubbles and stuff, yeah, of course you have to have the contrarian view sometimes. But I think, you know, it's not debt funded enough. It's nowhere near what we've seen in terms of the conditions from previous bubbles. Doesn't mean that it can't pop. But I think AI is probably almost, and this is a terrible term for it, but almost like the new Cold War. And it's really ultimately between the US and China. China with their advantage over cheap energy, right? Obviously labor costs as well, but the United States with their great power, but also the ability to really attract the world's top talent. Now, we had this discussion, actually, Jojo and I with some members recently about copper, and someone came on and said, guys, what do you think about copper at the moment? And it was a really, really good question because, you know, some of these metals do look overextended. Copper's a little bit behind. But if you think about its use case and you think about the microchips, you think about the precious metals, you think about all of these kind of factors that are really popping off, it's very, very hard to fade that at the moment. And that is just going to put a little bit of extra pressure onto risk markets. All right. Baptist, hello, mate. Yeah, and remember, guys, as well, please do let me know if you've got any chart requests. Yeah, and Jojo in here stealing, absolutely thieving one of my next points, but beautifully so, which is we're going to look at the volatility index, right? We're going to look at the VIX. Above 20, we want to remain cautious on risk assets. We've obviously been in that nice little kind of sweet spot recently, well below, but we are going to take a look at that. yield all running higher. Again, all of these things pointing to the same kind of short-term action. Solana, yeah, sure, absolutely. We'll take a look at Sol, and I know Jojo will remind me as well. I'm not too bad at forgetting, but Solana's definitely on the list. But do let me know, ladies, gents, if you've got any charts you want me to take a look at, and we will make time for that. Anyway, just to finish up here with Bitcoin, we're going to drive down onto the lower time frames as well. Absolutely no interest in shorting this here at the moment, not based on what I'm seeing here on the daily. I like the draw, meaning that, and let me just delete these lines. I'm just going to put this as a big green box that just kind of says, you know, come gobble me up, right? Good buys within here. I'm just going to delete these to make it a little bit cleaner because we now have the context for where they've come from. So while I think price could quite comfortably be drawing into this, I do also need to factor in this here, this consolidation right sat atop, because price did draw into here, but we failed to see that real large expansion away from this. This has been supporting, you know, you can imagine just a wall of passive orders sitting down there and people thinking 85K is a decent price to add to some BTC. If it dips lower, I'll add some more, etc. Right? You know, these kind of walls aren't made by people that are flashing in and out of positions, right? Then we have this consolidation. This I'm really interested in here. Put this in a brighter green, right? I tell you for why, because this was the consolidation that really led to this pop. Yes, we found that initial resistance here, but as we said, you know, moving down to the lower timeframes, which we'll show shortly as well, whether you're somebody that uses volume, Fibonacci's, etc. This was where it all got really, really interesting for me, right? Price, really strong move up. Can we hold this area? We moved into this nice volume shelf, low volume nodes here, and then we got that nice push higher. Made me really bullish above here. Just felt like the market could have that breath higher. We moved higher. Let me just do this for a second. Yeah, we moved higher here. Yeah, we took out, you know, all of these highs. It wasn't the most convincing close. I actually felt a little bit more bullish after this. We just managed to close above the high. But again, we can see there's pushback coming in here just by the upside wicks. But again, like I said, full disclosure, as I shared, feeling bullish above the level, bearish below it, right? See the wicks coming in there. That's a silly thing to do because it puts the drawings back. Right, but then we moved up and then the plan became really clear for me because obviously we had this level up here. Right, this level of resistance. And then we had this gap within here as well. And drawing back below these just means that price is probably looking into these lows here, resting liquidity. And then we've got this area of support. So what I'm actually looking here is for price to kind of hold this level. In terms of price really moving any lower, I need to see some closes below this, right? So some impulse, some conviction, some momentum, you know, like we did here. This is a really good example of it actually on a smaller scale. We had this consolidation, right? Price comes into here, accumulation, price then drops out. But look at the momentum. This is what I mean. Look at the displacement. Look at the inefficiencies in the move lower, right? It's showing you that sellers really, really, really took control here and they were the aggressors. So then the plan is really simple. Underside retest of this area, price coming back to rebalance these gaps or breakdowns of this micro consolidation here means the chances are highly likely that we're moving lower to different liquidity targets. This is a carbon copy of what I would need to see below here, not carbon, but pretty much is in that strong move below and then looking to short it in lower. Not interested in this here as it stands at the moment. So let's just drop down onto the lower time frames. I'm going to start here with a 4 hour. Let me just get the session breaks off as well. Quick sip of tea. Hey, Burnside, my man. How you doing? MRU Monster. Hey, thanks for joining. Crypto.can. I love that. Always think can do, not can't, right? Link, yeah, sure. Jojo as well. I might need your help. I'm away at the moment, place in the coast that we go to at the beginning of the year, so I don't have my main kind of office set up with me, so even more reliant on Jojo to remind me. But so far, unless I'm wrong, Jojo, we've got Solana and Link to take a look at as well. A few others kind of coming in the questions, but we will absolutely take a look at those. Right, so back to the charts. Looking at this and following on from Monday, the red boxes here. Sorry guys, I'll try and go a little bit slower. Trading view's been a little bit laggy today, and I'm not surprised in the slightest when we consider the amount of people that must be checking their positions going into Trump speaking in just over an hour. This was the range, right? So if I just Let's get rid of that for a moment, get rid of the volume. Really simply, great way to look at your ranges. Obviously, just look for price to really start to stall out, come back to retest levels. The consolidation that sets the new high, if you can't get above that, looking for this consolidation to hold. Really clean way is looking for the sweep of that high and then the sweep of the low when price reclaims it, right? And we just sat in this lower half of the range, right? I'm going to pop the volume back on and we can see that agreed with us beautifully here. Price getting trapped below the point of control, this large volume shelf over here as well. And then we got that large expansion candle lower. It did not give us any opportunity to get into trades. Obviously, it happened over Sunday night as well. We moved into Monday and it was around about here actually that we started reviewing this, saying that these inefficiencies on the way down are probably going to provide the blockers to move lower. But the intraday trades and the longs from here, which we didn't get to catch, unfortunately, I did release that in the Sunday Bitcoin report, intraday longs here, but actually it was very, very aggressive price action off the bottom. For any of my entry models anyway, it wouldn't have been particularly good. But the reason behind expecting and looking for this play where we get the bounce up into here is to punish late longs, but also this level. Really clean, nice support through here, key resistance through here. And again, this was the large expansion. So once more, if this is the area that we're looking for buyers to defend, then, expect a little bit of action, but it's also a great place to take some profits. If you were positioned higher for this short, I believe my boy Follis was as well, caught an absolute banger short. Might have got out a little bit early, not my critique, his, but it was a brilliant, brilliant read on the market. So as we got into here, this is where we found that resistance. All right, I know a little bit messy, but I'll show you this. Always full disclosure. This is just on the lower time frame, the 15-minute. We were looking how we could kind of grab a slice of this. The secondary move happened on Tuesday, really early in the morning again through Asia. Asia really been pummeling the markets down, started the big slide here as we did here, but this was also the markets opening, right? And remembering that we had those low liquidity as we were going into Monday. So as we closed down below this, then we really saw price sell off aggressively, okay? So if you're looking at the 4 hour to really define your higher time frame trend, then you can safely say as you break down from this level here, price is now out of the range and it's seeking lower prices, right? Previous areas of value. So we're going to transport that. I'm going to show you on the 15-minute here just to update people. Had some really nice messages from some of you as well. A really big shout out to one of my mentoring students, Joseph. We've had some really great sessions. They shared the squiggles from one of our Ethereum sessions as well, which was really, really interesting in terms of looking for these same kind of principles. So if I'm looking for a consolidation and then an expansion, also the reason we were targeting these areas, you can see the volume will look slightly different when you move down time frames. This was taken on a higher time frame, but you can see the areas pretty much overlay these red boxes with the areas of low volume, just combine those two there. So as price driving up into here, again, I want to see them disrespected. I want to see people not giving two hoots about shorting the market there, because every time we slam into this and pull away, it's showing me that sellers still control this market at the moment. So it gives us a good place to position. Now, the difficulty sometimes is, is whatever the opposite of catching a falling knife is. If you're catching a falling knife, it means that you're trying along the bottom. So yeah, maybe we did come up with something for this a while ago. But when you're here and you're ripping into these places, you just got to be careful, not looking to catch tops and bottoms, just looking to see where these consolidations form. Because then if I have consistency across the board here, well, quite simply, if I'm expecting the market to move lower and I can see a clean range emerging, or I can either short the highs, in line with my higher time frame bias, or I can short the breakouts, Then when you step into a trend, obviously the key thing then is looking to just respect these small consolidations here, which we monitor if we're bearish by looking at the up close candles, all right? And then just seeing those faster expansions away, So quick expansion to the downside, consolidation. Small consolidation, large move. Small consolidation, large move lower, all right? And then ultimately what we saw is price starting to settle into a range down here. This was different, right? Sharp move down, but then look how the consolidation started to kind of chop around here. This low defending price, all right? And again, if we were using this without the use of volume, we had some patience. We monitor the London session here. Looking for the low to be swept out. Let's do this a little bit larger for you. Looking for this high, which was the high that got swept as well. And there we have a really beautiful clean range, But I'm not saying it's a perfect range, right, by any means. But I'm saying if you are somebody that struggles with ranges, it's probably because you're either being a little bit impatient for them to form. So if you're waiting for this kind of double sweep method, then, you know, breakdowns of these areas, you look for the underside retest. Or if you're short bias, which you are, yeah, then this is a great shorting opportunity as we deviate the range high. Real long wick on the equity open, right? So probably difficult to position there. But again, if you're patient, you wait for the breakdown of this area, you know, for me as well, I'm looking to add volume to this, of course, but looking at this before the breakout, we can see value area high, value area low, point of control holding this cluster. We get that breakout from both, and we get the perfect underside retest as well. So 15-minute, 4-hour. I know I don't normally drive down as low as the 15-minute here, but it was just to add a little bit more context for our intraday traders. We can see at the moment price obviously just closing out the London session, starting to pull back. We need a bit of caution here because we are stepping in obviously to the pre-market shortly, but just over an hour. And at that same time, that's when Trump is supposed to speak as well. So looking for those catalysts. But the plan on Bitcoin at the moment is really, really simple. Just remaining patient. If I want to start catching some longs for here, I want to see some consolidation and some breakouts. All right. I do think there's a lot more room to breathe to the upside here. Like I said, kind of trading this down from here, you're trading it into a lot of congestion, all of this here, and then our higher time frame. And I would just rather wait for some structure to build in here, or wait for a consolidation, wait for that breakout. Because I do think, you know, it is very much going to depend on the news as well, what comes out of Trump and how the market reacts to that. But it feels like, you know, there's been a lot of downside on this already. So let me just check the questions quickly, take a sip of tea, and then we're going to dive into Solana and Link as well. Let's have a look what we got. I like money, fancy shit, buy me stuff. I know you rich, BC rich. Yarrow. I love it. I love it. Do you know what, actually, one of our members, I think last year or the year before, wrote me a poem, which I've got at home, actually, and it was absolutely hilarious. It was a genius bit of poetry, actually, but I really do appreciate that one. And I have no doubt if you work hard in this game, like any game, really, if you work hard with the right application, the right approach, smart, consistent, practical, engaged practice, you know, if someone like me can do it, I'm a firm believer that most people can. Or actually probably anyone. So let's dive back. And the first one, I think, was Solana, wasn't it? So what were we on? Let's have a little look, see if we were here on... Nope. What chart were we on, guys? Come on, someone give me a heads up. You know I'm terrible at this. Because if it was on my Mexi account, that will be the perp. There we go. Nice. This is just a beautifully clean range, and we were covering this. Where was it? Wednesday, which was here. Just put out a post and just saying to people, look, just be cautious here. Sol has made a really nice clean range, and that range is telling us, along with this resistance here, that shorts are getting paid here. All right. Again, need to see that expansion, need to see that aggressive move. You know, look at this consolidation here, and the aggression to the lows, drawbacks into these areas are probably going to suit the short traders. All right. Here we saw the breakdown from the range low, messy price action through here, no problem. Deviation, price steps back in, point of control, and then range higher. So where are we at the moment? Well, we've broken down from here, and there has been a lot of momentum to the lows. This, we're going to delete this now because this was the area we were looking to hold support, and obviously we ripped right through it. So when we closed below this here, which was the low of this, this was the trigger to short down here into these lows, all right? Because this area of demand here, or this small consolidation that sent price up into these highs, as we saw previously, as we were looking at with the Bitcoin breakout, we're looking for these areas or the inefficiencies to hold and propel price higher. If the buyers aren't able to defend this area, chances are you're moving to the next consolidation or area of balance where price was previously considered fair value, all right? So where are we now? Well, we're underneath the range. We're going to extend this now because we're on the show, right, to include current price action as well. And we can see we've got this beautiful underside retest happening at the moment. But again, I'm not really interested in shorting this here, because if we step back in the range, right, then I'm looking at the point of control at a really nice level above here. And then I'm looking to trade it up towards the range highs, all right. And that for me has better value to it than looking to kind of short down into this consolidation. I mean, look what happened here. And I was completely out of Sol here, apart from when we started to set the range, and then we broke straight out of it. All right. And what I mean by that is when we broke out of the range here, and the range was slightly different because we had the volume up to this point, we still didn't have the displacement. Yeah. So looking for those gaps, looking for those inefficiencies when price breaks down, showing us that one side, in this case, the sellers have really taken control. So we look at the consolidation, we get the pop above here. Anyway, providing that context is fine, but let's look at what we're looking at moving forward. Shorts from here, we're fine. We want to see price back in this range here. Yeah, and again, look, nice simple range drawn, focusing on the liquidity sweep of the high and the low. Those areas really, really nicely respected. Not saying you shouldn't redraw ranges as you get new information, but also, you know, making sure that you're looking here, because one of the things that we've got again is we can see this big volume shelf here, right, as that starts to come in. And that's something that I really want to be aware of here too. A lot of volume transacted there. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Now, looking for this area to kind of hold some form of support. I wouldn't mind seeing these lows swept out and then a really fast reaction here, because I think we could trap some more late shorts within here. Not saying that the move to the downside isn't on, so we do have to consider this, because as we look at the 4 hour, we can see what's happening, right? Like I said to you earlier, if we're consolidating, if price looks a bit choppy, if you can't look at it and say to me, my God, look, small consolidation, big explosion, consolidation, explosion. What I mean by that is, you know, consolidation, explosion, consolidation, explosion, these impulse legs that, you know, they're not taking any prisoners, right? Simple. So that's what I'm looking for. If price is something like this, yeah, we have this initial move higher, great, then we come back down. But look, there's no real displacement in here. Price is kind of chopping around. It's hard to get conviction in here because you have this area here that's supporting price through the region, and then you've got these highs which are capping the market. So again, probably the biggest thing that catches traders out, it's not technicals, it's not understanding a strategy, it's probably sticking to that strategy, remaining disciplined, but patience, right? I know I say this all the time on the show. It's obviously a steal from one of the absolute greats, but Warren Buffett said, you know, the market is, you know, a vehicle from a mechanism to hand, you know, wealth from the the impatient to the patient. All right. So remembering that. So, you know, you're sitting through all this chop here for days. And at this point, you're convinced price is going higher. That's the 14th of January. You finally get a breakdown out of this range here. And you're 14th through to the 19th. You've had to sit on your hands that whole time. Then you need to be ready, switched on, and really in tune with the markets, and then have that conviction to take the trade, right, after you've been sat there stagnant for a while. But anyway, we can see that we're in a trending condition to the lows, right? Consolidation, big sell-off, consolidation, big sell-off. So now this consolidation should tell us a lot, because one thing that I like about this here is, you know, we are into the origin of this big up move, right? So once again, if we are respecting the trend to the downside and we look at the last areas, the last bastions of support, in this case for the bears, then we can see this in here. And what did this do? We will dive down into the kind of micros of this in a minute, of this range, and show you. But price, as you can kind of see, if we just zoom in a little bit, small consolidation candles, wicks up to the highs, large move down, all right? Real kind of breakout of this area. What we absolutely didn't do is have any impulse move higher. Now, if we did get an impulse move higher, we'd want to be cautious here, right? Because we're coming back up into this inefficiency. So that's, you know, prime for rejection. But, you know, once you get that impulse, you're then looking for price to create a new area of value and then move higher. It's showing that, you know, buyers are willing to kind of accumulate in those areas. So we've got a really nice target if we get back inside the range here. But really what I want to do as well, and I'm just going to leave that box over there for where we move down onto the lower time frame, is this consolidation that's happening in here. Yeah, if we are going to hold this, then if we start to create this kind of range, then sweeps of the lows up to the point of control for intraday plays. Aggressive, yes. Positioning and sizing down a little bit, yes, because I'm going against the main trend here intraday. Or strong breakouts that hold that up into this level. All right, really, really simple playbook. Ultimately, if this thing breaks down aggressively, I'm not massively interested in shorting it here because we are coming into all of this noise where we saw a lot of participation from traders. I want to kind of take those moves when we get that initial breakout or we get those deviations of the range. Let's have a look. Can we look at crude oil, BC? I would definitely consider. I don't actually trade it myself, as you know. I know you are an absolute diva on oil. So if you can throw me the ticker you want me to take a look at, please, Jojo, and we will absolutely take a look at that. Jojo and I are having some conversations recently about covering some more traditional markets, some stocks. I trade, I trade indices, so like NASDAQ, the S&P 500, for example, a little bit of gold as well. I used to trade Forex quite a lot. It's how I kind of started out in this game, which is, for any Forex traders on here, which is why you can see my love for ranges, right? Because Forex is very much, much more of a ranging instrument, unlike the wild explosions we get in crypto, which was a really interesting changeover for me when I started trading that as well. But Jojo really linked in with metals, oil, stuff like that. So always picking her brain on this. But yeah, we can absolutely take a look at that. I'd really welcome the chance to get my head into a new chart. But please provide me the ticker you want me to take a look at, and I'll add it. We'll obviously cover link as well after this. So the plan in here, hopefully I've made that clean and it wasn't too rambly. But I want to see this consolidation in here. If price, pops, because look, this thick blue line here and the thin one just underneath it, if we go back and we kind of just redraw this choppy little range that we could have in here, right? The breakout play here really appeals to me as well, because if we are going to hold the range high here, yeah, draw that in nice and thick, then we'd be retesting a move back within the value area low. Yeah, a higher time frame range. So we've got a smaller range here. We've got the breakout. Obviously, again, that impulse. We see that aggression here from buyers. And then if we hold this area, this for me is absolutely game for trading up into this level. So I'm going to show you the range down on the 15-minute now. And actually, let me just... Right, so again, we don't want to cherry pick these things, right? It's just not going to do you absolutely any favors. So if we're looking across here, what are we seeing? Yeah, one of the really cleanest ways that you like to look for ranges is looking for these sweeps. If you start seeing all these small candles and price really isn't seeming to go anywhere, then I also just like looking at the extreme. So once we've got this information in here, yeah, we can draw this forward here. And we see we get a very similar kind of situation up here at the highs when we get this. So we've got the wicks from here down to this level. So basically from here to here, you're patient. Yeah, because you've got your information here. I will obviously do it with the range as well. And we will also look on the 30-minute how you can use that, exactly what I discussed before, looking for the high and low to be swept. Sometimes you're just going to get these real kind of small moves. Look how small the candles are here, right? This was Monday as well, remembering low liquidity conditions because the US market was closed. But again, if we're bearish here, the playbook is really simple. It's the breakdowns with momentum here. So the consolidation within here, any drawbacks looking to short this, or once price comes into here, it's looking to short the highs. But also what we want to do is I want to take the consolidation across, and I need to do this obviously in line with where I was providing the analysis. So this is where we basically drew our range from, right? When we had the wicks at the high, we've taken the wicks from the low, and then we included this down here. So even if we draw it through to this, let me zoom in a little bit, and hopefully you guys can see this. That's the value area high. That's the value area low. So we can see what we've done is when we're using volume as well. And look at this beautiful Gaussian distribution here. Yeah. So anyway, taking this from here, early stage breakdowns, I wouldn't have been interested in the shorts out of the value area low here, just because we're coming into these two wick lows here. So these were real key areas because this is where the market was being supported. So it was this move down here that we could wait for. All right. So we can just apply those same principles. Yeah, again and again, find that consistency, utilize volume. But I do really like to make sure that I've got a real visual element to it as well. So let's delete this for a second and go to a 1 hour chart, right? Just to cover a couple more interesting timeframes for you guys, just to look at this range in a slightly different way. So again, using the method that we discussed. And again, if you're driving this down onto two lower time frames, right? If we're using the daily here, then I'm going to utilize to form this range. I'm going to use an hourly. If I'm going from a 4 hour, I will then typically go to a 15-minute, which we just did. So we have the high, which is swept here. And then this low in here doesn't actually get swept until this, yeah? So that's really interesting. And, you might have got a little impatient here, for example, and done that one. Yeah, because price sets this, we see it in the range. But actually, as we look at this, what happened here? We've drawn this in here and here. We get the sweep. But we've already got this level. We see the deviation. We're bearish. We step back in the range. Yeah. Move to the lows. And then we break out of this range here and we look to come back. We then, obviously, when we have this information and we've got our double sweep here, literally just before we get the breakdown, we can take this from the consolidation. And you'll see that you've got a very, very similar range here to what we had on the 15-minute. Okay. So in terms of this is what we're looking for, but basically a reverse of down here. So now I'm on the hourly, I can say, okay, well, actually, look, we've taken out a high here, a little bit of a tight range. We've taken out this high. We swept this low. Yeah, so price, we can see nice reaction at these lows at the moment. Price starting to just take a little bit off the bottom. So then what we're going to do, we're going to add our volume to this, right? And we got a beautiful range here. So again, really simply, just these big explosive moves off of here that's going to get us back into our higher time frame, above our higher time frame value area low. Okay. Now you might be somebody that looks at this and says, okay, well, actually, I need a daily close in there. In which case, if you need the daily close in the higher time frame range, you absolutely wait for that. If you're looking for lower time frame moves in and out of ranges that are a little bit less reliable, because obviously there's a lot more noise on the lower time frame, all I could recommend is just looking for those explosive moves. All right, making sure there's real commitment, not price kind of ambles into the range and doesn't really do much. You want to see aggression. You want to see walls getting broken through to move forward. All right. I like to see everything, so no bias. Yeah, absolutely. Well, shill me a ticker, Jojo, if you can, please, for oil using crude futures, or I don't know what's on mine, actually. Let me have a quick look. I've got oil down here, but I don't know if it's the same one. So I've just got the CL1 light crude futures, which I keep an eye on, but let me know if it's a different ticker. If not, we're going to take a look at our friend Link, and let's do it on a nice clean chart as well. All right. And remember, everyone, if you do have any questions, please do let me know. Be nice to see my volume profile. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, Craigie boy. Of course. Let me just finish this on Solana for a minute. Right. And I'm just going to hide all of this so we can just go fresh here. Right, so what Craig's asking here is on the hourly. Come on, TradingView. Someone crank the handle. There we go. So I'm guessing it's this gap down here that you're looking at, Craigie boy, right? So, and please do correct me if I'm wrong. If not, I'll just look at this. But this is a really good example, right? Because what we've got here, and this is where there's always nuance in trading. The first thing I'm going to do, if I'm focused here on the hourly and this is what I'm using to dictate my playbook, then I'm saying to myself, okay, where are the buyers and sellers in control of this market, and who's in control? Are we trending? Are we consolidating? Here we can see a lot of up and down. So we're clearly consolidating, right? So we've got a range situation. So that's something we can look to draw in. I'm looking at the last areas of support. And for that, it can be really, really clear and helpful to just focus on the key wick lows here. All right, so looking at that major wick that comes down, we see this whole area held. What do we get? Big close below here, retest into this, price sells off. And once again, what's kind of supporting the lows here? A little bit less of a kind of box, although it kind of is when we look at it. So we'll keep to this slightly larger area. Actually favor this wick here, but getting as many wicks in as I can. We kind of got this tight consolidation or the start of it anyway. Now within this, what you're talking about here, Craig, is this gap, I'm assuming. Right, and you know what they say about assumptions, right? So if I'm wrong, please do let me know in the comments. Yep, perfect. All right, mate. So as we're holding this, I really like the downside wick at the moment, driving into this, so that's good. We are just back in the range. So what I'd be looking here is saying to myself, all right, if we're reacting here at the lows and we can see offered support here, we got the deviation. What happened? Price stepped back in the range, expanded up to the range highs. We're now looking to kind of support this move here. So within this gap, I'm asking myself, what's the upside potential? Yeah, up into these highs. Now, we can see here we've got more of a V-shaped recovery. So if price comes down like this and sets a consolidation, then when price returns this area, I'm looking for it to test the consolidation, not the high. In this case, the same if it would be a low. When price leaves one of these V-shapes, highs or lows, like we get here, price moving up, moving away quite quickly, my expectation is the liquidity is above the high. All right. So that's the area I'd like to see price attack. However, we need to appreciate if we're looking at the kind of microstructure here, it is, kind of just hacking around in a little bit of a range here. So the cleanest play for me would be a large expansion above this, and then looking to get involved in these areas here, taking out this consolidation, because if this is where the sellers are in control, if they're holding through this, now you imagine the market's moved against you, you got large positions open here to the downside, and then price moves away, you're taking on board that new information, you're saying to yourself, okay, actually, crap, I think, I'm wrong on this. I certainly don't want to take the risk with that. So I'm going to mitigate. Price returns this area. You can just get out of that position for minimal or no loss, reconsider the situation. If price then breaks back down into the range, you can re-add here, aligned with your original conviction. But that's why these kind of breakouts and retests are so important. And what I really want to see here are these people being offside, because it's then going to force, if they're still there and they're still defending, right, then if they can't defend anymore, all of those passive orders just get blown through with aggressive buyers. Then returning to this area gives those traders the opportunity to get out at minimal or no loss. But it then also gives people the opportunity to say, okay, well, we've broken out. We've seen that weakness turn to strength here. So let's jump on that train and ride it higher. So for me at the moment, I would be a little bit flat. Some of the best gap plays for me. Yeah, so when we see stuff like this is almost kind of reverse of this, right? We've got the highs, we've got the lows. Yeah, we kind of got a little bit of a gap in here that we did return to rebalance, right? But actually, although it would have been difficult to get into, if we were looking really at that being the key area of support, I'm obviously not going to draw it to the bottom of that wick. Do have a limit. You have to bring in a little bit of nuance sometimes, right? But we can see support coming through here, support again here, support again here. This was the really big move away. Yeah. Now you see these big moves and you think, yeah, but crap, there's no way I could have got involved in that. Well, sometimes you just can't, right? But there's a couple of different ways to look at it. Looking at the absorption wick from the low, and then this obviously holds perfectly. So looking for price to kind of draw back here and then to sell off, obviously we would be looking at something around about a 5-minute time frame here to enter. Then you can still get some intraday plays into this level, and then you can look to kind of pyramid into that as you're moving lower. There's no problem adding to winners, not in my opinion, not as long as your conviction, your targeting is the same. So while we're in here, again, the caveat here is that we have Trump speaking very shortly, as well as the pre-market open in the US. So it's not the time to really expose yourself to too much risk, but just based on these principles, this is the area I would look for price to at least push up to attack the liquidity resting above these highs. Any real strong breakdown from here, we would obviously then need to follow back onto our higher time frame analysis. We know we're coming down into a lot of noise, but the ideal scenario is that we see this potent large breakout to the upside here. So I hope that helps, mate. Just kind of combining those things can be really, really useful. So let's get rid of these and pop this back on, and I'll get an update out later with the thoughts on how this is going. So let's get ourselves across the link. Let me just check the questions quickly. Christoph, hello, mate. Welcome back. Mate, me doing BTC on the weekly, monthly. Yeah, my deviations, like to see your views and compare with mine. Absolutely no problem, mate. And yeah, so you're very welcome, Craig. Let's jump into Link, and then we'll finish up with a higher time frame view on Bitcoin, unless anybody else has things. We still have about 10 minutes left in the show if we want to use it. Right, link. Right, let's get ourselves. Also, as well, guys, does depend with this. Maybe if you are looking at this more from a kind of investment perspective, or like a whole perspective, do let me know, and I won't look at the perp charts. They're going to be very similar, but obviously, as a futures trader, we want to make sure that we linked in with the derivatives charts, right? I'll just crack on with this one until we kind of move back. But apologies as well, guys. I really should start, adding in some weekly as well. So starting on the weekly here on Link, this has been a key area, which we're just slamming into now. Also this. Right, this is what we had on the charts before. Why was this? Because look, we saw unbelievable support through here, resistance through here, move above. Let me zoom in a bit, sorry guys. Yeah, then when we created this demand here and price moved away, price again coming into this area, deviation above, nice buys, deviation above, nice buys. So looking for a similar playbook here on a weekly scale, so I can kind of get rid of this. Focus for me here now, localized, is this. Yeah, absorption coming into the lows here. This is the area we want to see hold, and it's just a beautiful range. Yeah. So again, looking at the highs, looking at the lows here, we can really see that formation using volume as we move this across. Yeah, really, really nice. Now, I know you see these really big scam wicks, but what this is telling me is that there was, there are definitely some buyers present down here. Actually, I shouldn't really draw these as far across, should I, on the weekly, or it'll go across the screen forever. All right, so looking at this on the weekly, what does it tell me? Well, it tells me we're consolidating, right? Highs are getting sold, lows are getting bought. So until we see some conviction on this time frame away from those areas, at the moment, this is offering us better buying opportunities than it is selling opportunities. Now move down to the daily. Of course, this will adapt because we're on a slightly different time frame, but actually, pretty decent here. I'd say, in truth, this probably represents more of the accuracy in terms of the daily for the consolidation, because this moved down into this level. And then again, looking at the volume shelf that we have down here, doing that in a slightly brighter color. I'm now going to get rid of the weekly one that we put on there as well, because I've refined it down to the daily now. Again, any strong breakdowns from here, I'd then consult with the weekly again, but depends completely, obviously, what you're using as your high time frame for your framing time frame, and then for your execution, if you're using a triple screen system or a double screen system, for example. So we can see really clear, we've got the point of control higher up here. So what I like about this, again, is if we kind of step back into this here, then, intraday wise, I'd probably have a little eye on, but definitely not that level. I'd have an eye on that. Right, but looking for that expansion in the area down here, the value area low to be held, and then price to move higher. What we can see here as well is there's no secret that we are finding support in this consolidation. This was the consolidation that led to that large move higher, that then led into the beautiful retest of that wonky gap that I've just drawn, which drew price into the new highs. But look, when price came into this high here, same as when this one came into this, there's no domination of those highs, right? Now, the lows are interesting because, as we can see here, we haven't really swept many of those. We did. Did we sweep that one? Just kind of swept that one here, and that led to the consolidation that got us back in the range. So there's a lot of resting liquidity down below these lows. A move I'd love to see here, and where I would really look to be getting long, is something like this, clearing out the liquidity below these levels, stepping back into this range, and then trading it higher. There we go. So nice kind of playbook here on this, right? While we're in this consolidation, absolutely not interested. I'm just going to squidge the chart up a little bit more. Look for our lower liquidity down here that we've got. If we got a really strong breakdown of this, and I mean strong, and down below these wicks, All right, then looking for that kind of underside retest here to trade it down. You got to be careful. People call these kind of scam wicks and that, right? But do be careful with them. You know, those obviously clearing out the liquidity below here as well. So I would be a little bit cautious because we are low. But ultimately, if the market sentiment, everything's turning that way, my high time frame bias is for that. And then you can absolutely bet that I'm going to be taking that trade to the downside. But for now, I have absolutely no interest in that. Like I say, if I'm looking here for opportunity and expected value, that's much better to the upside for me. That's certainly how I see it. Looking at this here as well, I would add this to the range. Again, looking at the absorption from the bodies of these wicks, aligning that with our value area high here, we just got such a beautiful range here on Link on the daily. We're seeing this across a lot of altcoins at the moment, obviously similar to what we saw with Solana. These moves getting people really, really horny for more upside, but just slamming into this sell wall that's up there. Let's take a look down onto the 4 hour, see if we can just gather a little bit more context. And then we'll move across and finish up on the higher time frames on BTC for our friend Christoph. So just moving this across. Yeah, obviously really clean consolidation in here. Again, just ask yourself if that's really your immediate target, because we could absolutely, it's untapped down there. We could sweep out that low and look at what's happening at the moment with this cluster of lows below us. Do you really want to be short into that? This was the consolidation here that led to that move higher. I think for me, the game is one of patience, right? And if we just see that, that strong move below there and we look left, there's not really much noise below this. So if we draw back into this area and then we start to see absorption, we get some short setups. For me, I'm happy to take them. But what I really want to see is this, and then price step back in the range and look to move a little bit higher. But what we can see here is we don't really have a whole ton more information here on the 4 hour, right? Again, like we saw, I believe it was with Solana, we had the consolidation, strong move, small consolidation, strong move again. So if we're looking at this now as a trend, a short consolidation here followed by an aggressive move down, one or two things is probably going to happen here. So I think it'll be continuation of the trend, but I would want that below these levels as previously explained, or we get caught in the deviation, price steps back in which case we then look to long and just accept that we were wrong on this one. All right. But at the moment it's starting to form a range, but there's not really too much to go on in there for me. So again, I'm going to move down to the hourly here and see if we can make head nor tail of this here. Even on here, not the cleanest of the clean, right? But what I can start to see immediately by looking at this, and again, what I'm doing here, obviously I have the power of hindsight here as well. I'm not saying that I would have taken that short, but what I am saying is support through here. But looking at this here, this was the consolidation, right? Price tried to move up here, took out these highs, strong move down below. So again, when price gets back to this area, it's much more likely that we're going to find good shorting opportunities unless we really displace above it and turn this bearish or the seller controlled consolidation here, force them out of their hands and then get on board with the buyers up into this consolidation. So this is where we are on that. I'm going to draw this down to a 30-minute now as well, just to see if we have anything clearer. What I do quite like about the 30-minute here is, prices come down into this area. This really isn't the easiest consolidation to draw in because we've had the move down. For me, it kind of starts about here, really. Normally looking for the consolidation to start on the downstroke for the range, but I'm sure some volume purists will correct me on this, but I like it from here because I think this is the moment when we really start to saw that price quickly got back into this area here, rejected again from this higher. So I'm going to draw this from here across to give myself an idea of where we are. We can see quite thin at the moment. We're looking at this range and saying, how much does this really stack up? But, once again, we want to be aware of the volume shells in here. Because if I'm drawing this across as well, on a 30-minute scale, we could see potentially price moving back into here. The intraday traders, your scalpers, something into the point of control here. But realistically, look, like I said before, if I'm looking to really go long here, what I would really want to do is see something like this, right? And then holding this area here. It's actually, hang on. something like this, yeah, strong move up into this area, seeing that displacement, looking for those inefficiencies, looking for those low volume nodes for price to draw into, and then looking to take longs from there. We're going to see this across a lot of crypto assets at the moment, all right, in these consolidations. So that's what we're aiming for. Right, let me finish up. We'll spend a couple of minutes, we'll go over just to take a look at the higher time frame on BTC. And actually, you know what? Let's look at a nice spot chart here. Might have a clean Binance one. I think I cleaned this out the other day. Yeah, well, pretty much. Almost. Beautiful. Right. So let's start with the yearly. Yeah, yearly pretty bullish here, not really telling us too much, but what we can see here is price just comfortably displacing above these highs, right? And then what happens from here? This is actually a thing of beauty, right? When you look at it here, because take out this high, right? What do we do? Does price just reject here and do we get that long wick and price bugger off back down? No, big strong body close. What do we do when we close this upper candle here? This is where we leave our inefficiency. This is where we leave our gap, and price has just done exactly the same here. Yep, another big, beautiful body close here, because if price was really rejecting here, we're looking for that to wick down and get back below this high, which would just make us, show a little bit more caution. But as for now, we can see here quite clearly, we created another gap. We're going to follow this process of expansion, respecting the inefficiency, good repricing, expansion, respecting the inefficiency and moving up. Then I'm actually quite interested to see Bitcoin down here at about 74,289 stepping back into this area. All right, now I'm going to look at the quarterly. And, leaving these on the chart, we can see these nice reactions, right? Price respecting these. Again, nice bullish engulfing candle here, giving you a really, really good trigger, either that or I would look for something like this. So that was a bearish gap on the way down. Again, going to trap traders here that are just, shorting down into an area that really should be kind of providing support until proven otherwise. Then when we get above this bearish gap here, they're in the pain, they're in the hurt locker there. And we invert this gap, close above it, and then we're looking to attack the highs. But we've done something similar now, right? So we're looking for price to draw back into this area. So let me get rid of this and say, well, okay, what's the catalyst? What's the catalyst we're looking for? And I actually quite like this. We haven't tested this. This is, again, going to be massive on the lower time frame charts. But this is the new area of demand, yeah? Down close candle, strong close above, looking for retest into this. Actually, price found buyers at this inefficiency here, right, which helped quite a lot. Now let me just lock these, because otherwise they are going to slide all over the place. Beautiful. Okay, so again, I really like this level here. If I'm looking at this, this is at 71,280 flat. Not saying we're going to rip down there, and we're still respecting this at the moment, but we really didn't. We barely displaced above this, barely closed above it, right? And we quickly came back down. So I'm putting more weight on this area, seeing a retest. And guess what? If we look at this here as well, what beautiful confluence we have drawing this across, which was our yearly level. So price drawing back down into this area here. Now looking at the 1 month. 1 month is kind of stepping into a little bit of consolidation here. Yeah, so the beautiful expansion, consolidation. Again, buyers found in here. And if we're looking at this consolidation, thinking, remembering what we were talking about, even if I'm just taking the first few candles off of this, where do we want to be buyers if we're looking at a range? You want to be a buyer at the range low if your conviction is that price is going higher, drew down perfectly into these low volume nodes and made us a nice play to the upside. Either that or you're obviously looking for a breakout of that range as well. Now, can I highlight this little bugger somehow? Hang on. It's trading view just lagging, isn't it? So it's stitching me up. There we go. Right, so now we're here. We can see, right, price holding this gap, yeah, this inefficiency, fair value gap, whatever you want to call it, price drawing into this demand. Again, I'm more interested in this because of the impulse away from it. Doesn't mean that I don't think that this can hold in here, but once more, if I'm looking at this as a range and I've got all this information in front of me here, well, we're currently holding range low and rejecting at the point of control. If I once again add the volume shelves in here, where I'm looking to see a little bit of support, and the main volume shelf here at the high where I'm expecting to see resistance. Yeah, that's a really nice kind of range we're stepping into here. So watching these lows to be held, deviations, have been paying the highs and lows, selling up here and buying down here on a monthly scale. Let's go from here to the weekly. So interesting here, right? Price really kind of consolidating in here. It's a very, very tricky short from here because we're kind of coming straight back into this. And again, on the highest time frames, I'm looking for buying opportunities here if I'm looking to position. So I actually, have my eyes on the 71,280 level. If we do start to break down, maybe looking to short into that on the lower time frames, not actively looking to do it on the higher time frames. But if we're looking at the range that we're establishing in here, right? I just draw a box over it, obviously, as you know, should use volume with these things as well, right? But so even if you look at the consolidation here, point of control here, well, if this is the area we're looking for support, if this is the value area low, what I like about a potential breakout from here is that an impulse move, above here, holding the area of the point of control and the breakout area of the range, into range high there, that's a really nice trade. And let's see, I'm not saying you catch the exact bottom to the top, but that's, an 18% trade there, $16,930. So let's clear that up. And we can see that we're just in consolidation. I say just. So let's remove this for a moment. And we can see that we've got the support level. So we've still got these drawn in from the higher time frame as well. We can draw this across from here. Oh. And now we've got a really nice range set in there. So as I now move down onto the daily, again, same principles. We want to be long from the lows, right? So I want to take the volume into consideration here again. I just leave both of these in purple, guys. Volume shelf here actually really shouldn't go amiss. Maybe even the one above it here, but it is tucked back a little bit. Either way, I'm going to want to see a move above here. And a really nice play, if I was looking for the breakout, would be into this rejection at this consolidation here. Yeah, coming back, holding this level, and then price really pushing up. So we get that momentum. We come back here and respect these levels. Yeah, the breakout. Also coming back ideally into some form of inefficiency here or newly formed area of demand, and then we move higher. If not, then these areas down here from the lows, good buying in here. So the moves down, back in the range here, point of control should always be considered in my opinion, and then we can move up from here up into the range higher. All right, so that's where we're looking there. Perfect. So just getting a cup of tea delivered. Happy days. So then if I now move this down to the 4 hour, we can see at the moment, it's just kind of floating a little bit in no man's land. Now, we could get a reaction here because like we said, we're in this consolidation. All right. But if that was the case, you'd want to really see a consolidation here and then a breakout. If not, happier to look for these kind of levels and just be a little bit patient as we move forward. All right, guys. So yeah, apologies. I know we've overrun a little bit there, Christoph's. Hopefully that was helpful for the higher time frame. I'll try and make sure to add a bit more of that in as we move forward into the future shows. All right. I'm actually on some leave next week, so I will try my very best to get a show in if we can. If not, I'm going to see you the week after. Please do remember in about 20 minutes from now, Mr. Donald Trump is supposed to be speaking as well. We have the World Economic Forum going on, so do stay frosty as we've got some news drops tomorrow as well. All right, legends, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate every single one of you. Have a fantastic day ahead. Trade safe, and I look forward to seeing you out there.